kind of thought for the week. I kind of start every week with a thought, and it really is not Curare related. Actually, it's Logan and I were talking about it today, and it was something I was thinking about for a long time, and it happened to Logan actually yesterday. I had a real good friend of mine who is from Minnesota here. He and his wife, they have three children, young couple, have the world at their feet, and they were traveling to Kentucky from Minnesota with their baby, and they had their two other kids stayed home, and they were traveling on Interstate 74. And anyone that's gone through Illinois and Interstate 74 will know that it's tons of construction always in the summertime. And I've driven on that road 100 of times. So they were traveling on Interstate 74 right around Champaign, and the construction on the road was stopped. So there was stop traffic on the road. For whatever reason, he was distracted and didn't see it. And at the last moment, he popped his head up, saw a semi in front of him, tried to swerve to get out of the way, and unfortunately, the way the car went, hit the passenger side. And his wife he's kind of struggling right now. His wife we don't know if she's going to make it or not. Chest was crushed, her arm's already been amputated, face was crushed, and obviously he is just distraught. And it really got me thinking, just kind of about Curare, and that, this job is really tough sometimes. It's draining. It's heavy at times, but Curare can be a lot of fun too. Curare can be a lot of fun. We can have a lot of fun at this job. There's a lot of times where our job is 99% failure. It's 99% no. And it's that 1% success that, if you're 1% successful here, you're doing great. So we probably heard this a million times about these incidents happen, and you just take a step back and you're like, oh, I need to appreciate life for what it is. I need to appreciate the moments. But you've probably heard it 100 times, but I thought, okay, I'll say it for the 101st time is, choose to enjoy the job. Choose to enjoy the moments here at Curare that are a lot of fun. And absolutely, if when you have the successes here and when you get the victories, enjoy them, celebrate them, do everything you can do to just, embrace it. Because, like my buddy he and his wife had this future ahead of them, and they had this, and they still do, but it's like everything that they had planned, everything that they had worked for was over in a split second. It's done. Their life is permanently changed, and the trajectory, probably still great, is totally different. So we've heard that a million times. You don't know what life's going to bring you. So choose the times at Curare to enjoy the work, and choose to enjoy the enjoyable parts about Curare, and absolutely, when you have the success here, embrace it, enjoy it, celebrate. I know we have at our family a time when I make a placement or do something like that, we have a family celebration. We do something that's consistent, that's appropriate for our family, but find something for yourself to enjoy the successes, and embrace this job for the great things that it actually is. And it goes without saying, but of course, your family, your friends, everything like that, because as we know, as Logan witnessed with himself personally and his mother-in-law, it can get taken away at the snap of a finger. So don't wait to enjoy things at a later time. Enjoy it now. So just wanted to say that. Wanted to pass this on to Logan. Logan, take it away, and look forward to
Awesome.
seeing your presentation.
Great, great. Appreciate it, Jeremiah. That good messaging for recent for everybody that doesn't know. My mother-in-law was in a tough accident last night. That fortunately she's okay. No serious injuries. CT scans came back great, but we were gearing up for the pool party. Then next thing you know, my wife got a call, and we were sprinting out the door and ended up being at the hospital pretty late. But it's kind of wild. You can't prepare or plan for anything like that. Just to Jeremiah's point, you got to be fortunate and celebrate and be appreciative of those things, because you never know what can happen. So, well, cool. Well, hope everybody's Friday is going well. Appreciate you joining me. Obviously, I got the discussion topics included in our invite here. I'm going to run through them, and yeah, appreciate you guys. So, So do's and don'ts to name clearances and sendouts. Obviously, we're going to start with name clearances. Those are the first part of our process to any connection that is going to be made, could be made. It's our first interaction with the client based on a specific candidate. So obviously, as any good relationship, it's great to get off on a good note. So clearances is as small as a part of they are in the process. They're what starts the process. So it's it's best to bring your A game, put your best foot forward when preparing those, why you're sending those, knowing exactly your reasoning behind the introduction, why you're sending it. And so as you'll see in my discussion topics there, your confidence in your why is the first and foremost thing that I'd like to talk about. Whenever you're sending a clearance, first step that you do, it's you making the decision to send the clearance, right? Candidate doesn't get to do that. You're the one who has total control of that. We're the ones who have the jobs, the relationships, the clients that we're going to be introducing to. So really, in essence, after you getting your parameters, doing an interview with a candidate, or maybe sometimes not, understanding from a hopper to where they're looking in a specific geographic area, type of practice, you are the one that's making the decision to make that introduction. So from there, it's good to have confidence in why you're taking that action. Because it's going to be your responsibility to see that through, essentially. Obviously, we all know in this, in our role, in our seat, and how we operate, your why for introducing a candidate and sending a name clearance could be extremely strong. You've spoken with the physician, exactly what they're looking for. You've spoken with them directly about the position already. It was a direct applicant, right, to on the web, and you've confirmed direct interest, direct location, direct client, essentially as strong as possible. The doctor's going to be excited to get their name cleared and into that employer for consideration. On the flip side of that, sometimes your why can need some explaining or need some preparation and some plausible deniability sometimes. That would be the case when you're working with a candidate and you're working with a physician where their general parameters, their location, what they're looking at, what they're going to be interested or excited about. And with you having the knowledge that you do about jobs that we have that may not be aware of, or clients that would be a good fit for this candidate, you're taking some chances, and you're putting the risk and the connection to be made on your shoulders versus allowing the candidate to check off on every mark from there. And so if that's the case, obviously you need to know and be able to explain to an employer or a colleague who's working directly with that employer why you're sending that name clearance. Right. And so if you have a why, and it could be, again, as strong as, hey, I've spoken directly with this candidate about your position, they're good to go. On the flip side, they could be, hey, I know this doc is looking in this general area and interested in these types of positions. Your position checks most of these boxes, and I'm going to be interested and feel confident that I can make a connection out of this. Either side of the coin that you're on, you need to have confidence and be able to exude that confidence through the process, because if you're not confident in taking action on that clearance, or hesitant, or any sort of, man, this may not be a good fit, it most of the time is not going to be a good fit. And from there, it's going to be very hard for your colleagues or that employer to have any confidence in why should we clear this doc and why should we be excited about getting started in their candidacy. So just remember that whenever you're getting ready, prepping futures, getting ready to fire, a doc out to multiple positions, know each and every one of them and have the confidence in why you're sending that and how you're going to be able to relay that information to your colleague running point for the employer or that employer directly. If you have the why and you have the confidence to it, it's going to allow you to speak and push that process forward in a much better, thorough, and kind of push it with conviction on both sides. Whether the candidate's not completely all bought in, client's not completely bought in, you're going to be able to take that and pretty much make it make sense to both sides onto why this is a good fit for a potential connection. Obviously, you're not guaranteeing a placement, not guaranteeing this is going to be a match made in heaven, but there's those cases where you should be confident in why this doctor and this employer should be having a conversation to explore to see if that's there could be further interest there on both sides. So yeah, have confidence in your why and be convicted whenever you are moving forward and beginning the process. That leads me right next into my second discussion topic: preparing to finish what you start. A lot of times across the board, we see folks, start the process and then for one reason or another not be able to push it or let their foot off the gas too quickly. And that's just in our day and age with the way recruiting works, and obviously with our most important motto here, time kills deals, TKD, that's just unacceptable. So it's in a situation where you are choosing to introduce a name, it's imperative that you should be planned, ready, and able to start that process from start to finish. Whenever you send a name clearance, essentially you should have, there's only two ways for it to end, right? If we send a clearance, it's either going to end up being dead or they're end up signing a contract. There's no in between. Now, obviously, there's multiple things that can happen between those, and clearances can turn into not clear. They can turn into a sendout. They can turn into one phone conversation. They can turn into several calls. They can turn into 3 rounds of calls, virtual calls. They can turn into on-site interviews. They can turn into contracts, negotiations, sign, decline, whatever it is, wherever that process ends. Whenever you send that name clearance, you need to be ready and prepared for each step of the process. Obviously, as recruiters, we want to be 2 steps ahead at every angle, every stop in the process, because that's what's going to allow us to, as I've heard multiple times, take the reins of the process versus leaving it in the hands of the candidates and the employers. Obviously, if we know we do that, our time frame is going to be 6 months before we get anything cooking, whereas our goal is to turn that into a 60 to 90-day process. So whenever you're looking at an introduction, you should always be thinking, all right, I'm sending this clearance, I'm thinking 2 steps ahead. How am I getting this person on the interview, right? I'm already at that point in my mindset to where it's like, I'm calling for action. I'm going to push this process forward to until they tell me no, or they're not interested on either side, and even in that case, there's multiple angles where you can still save deals and find out what the issue is, find out what the actual hesitancies are. Until it's dead or signed, you should be deliberately pushing that name clearance into the next step with a plan of attack on second and third steps moving after that. The better that you can build that into your follow-up process with name clearances and putting them into a kind of having your own roadmap, the quicker that you can do that, it's going to speed up the process, which is always great, right? Which on the back end, that's going to free up more bandwidth for you to dedicate to making new connections, pushing other things along, allowing you to kind of just move that candidate through the process much quicker and moving them to that dead or sign, right? Because obviously whenever we start the process, that's the only 2 ways things can end is going to be dead or they're going to sign a contract. Where that stops in the in between, that's on, that obviously has multiple variables in it, but we have to be prepared to push that and not stop until we get to either one of those.
Logan, can I add something real quick?
Absolutely, Ian, hop in here.
Yeah, I know, and I know you're going to dive into this in detail, but I just want to kind of add a thought here about preparing to finish what you started. And this might sound, I guess, a little dramatic. I don't know, you guys, but if you're going to send a name clearance email if you're going to send a CV, whatever it is, you're making a commitment to follow up with persistency and discipline. Okay.
Absolutely.
And if you're not willing to do that, you're not planning to do that, then I really question how much you should be working that candidate. Maybe that candidate isn't good enough. I don't know. But by sending the clearance, you're committing to following up every 24, maybe 48 hours, but trying to send that every day, trying to get as quickly as you can to 3 follow-ups and a takeaway. The faster you do that, the faster things convert. And I know Logan's going into detail about this, but I think this is part of what he means when finishing what you start, is you want to try to do that with speed as well. That's just as important, so that you can, get to a point where either it's moving forward or it's dead, and you can allocate your energy to other things.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we all know our process from a 1, 2, 3 takeaway situation on name clearances and in every step of the process. But I would even add to that too, in a case where, because a clearance is such a minimal, it requires very minimal effort on the client side of things, right? If you think of, whoever you're working with, whoever the point of contact is for that employer, their clearances is they've got a list. They know who and which candidates are being introduced to them almost at all times, right? And it's like, if we bump them enough, they either send us clear or not clear, right? So it requires very little effort on their end. So me and my thought process is I take that as that allows me to kind of be even more so aggressive on the very front end, because I'm asking them for a very simple answer. Is this doc in process with you? Or are they not? Are we able to present them, right? And so, to Ian's addition earlier, I would even say that there's cases where you can send a clearance and follow up on the same day, right? If you connect with a physician, let's say you're doing early morning calls, 7 to 9, whatever, you get a doc on the line first thing in the morning, and you've already got, action that you can take for them, right? If you send that clearance at 8:30, 9, 9:30, before 10, 10:30, like, there's no reason why you can't double back in that afternoon and, with a simple, hey, I know I sent this bright and early, wasn't sure if it got buried throughout today's emails, is Dr. So-and-so clear? And obviously hit them with a follow-up call with that same messaging. And I've never ran into a client where, obviously we've had some that'll push back, say, hey, we need 24 hours, 36 hours, 48 hours, whatever it is to clear the candidate. And that's okay. But for those that we don't know that that's the case, why not bump them again in the same day, right? Because it's like, again, it's such a minimal part of the process to where it's not going to be you're not going to be offending anybody. You're not going to be upsetting anybody. And if you do, it's you can negate that with, hey, my excitement for getting this candidate introduced is, extremely high. I think it's a great fit. So I apologize for my persistence, but is the doc clear or not, right? And so I think there is times where you can certainly maybe even double back, and I know my team knows this, but I call it a double tap. Maybe that's from playing too much Call of Duty back in the day, but yeah, double tap them on whatever the follow up is, and from there I think that it'll requires minimal effort on their end, requires minimal effort on our end, and it'll get you some results much quicker than waiting until the next day. So. So yeah, I'll stop there. I know with Ian's, add in here, is there any questions, any scenarios, anything that anybody wants to add or bring up based on, preparing to start what you finish, or confidence in why you're sending? Cool. No questions. Perfect. So yes, we'll move right into follow-up protocol, which obviously we kind of covered here briefly, but follow-up in your name clearances should be very black and white. It's 1, 2, 3 takeaway. That follow-up should be obviously done via email, done with a follow-up call to the client. I even encourage too, if it's a direct to employer, we've got the point of contact who is the decision maker, smaller private practices, and we have their cell phone. I always recommend shoot a quick text over as well to those clients. There's a lot of clients in our days that are practicing physicians that run their own clinics, that are private clinics, that can text throughout the day and clear the doctor. It's something that, I can think of 4 or 5 clients off the top of our head that it is effective with. Larger systems where you're working directly with an admin or an assistant, or, multiple hospital systems, yes, a text may not be as impactful, or may not get through to the right person, or may not, be of any, an email or a phone call would suffice for sure. But in those situations, it should, definitely don't hesitate to take a chance to text the employer. Obviously, with time frames, that's something that I like to spell out for our employers. Obviously, if it's not something that we've worked with in the past, or you're familiar with their process, that's one thing that I used to do a lot whenever I would start a name clearance, get into a send out with an employer or a client that I personally hadn't worked with before. I know obviously you've been here, after you've been here for multiple years, you've crossed paths with several employers, here and there, but obviously there's still thousands of employers and jobs in RMS that you don't work every day. So I used to, whenever I would set the tone with the name clearance, I would follow up with that, dive directly into their process, and maybe even educate them on, what's been producing the best results here at Curare. And so that way it's a good reminder for them, but it also sets the tone for them in your working relationship, and your direct relationship. And it's good, I think, for them to get that reminder every once in a while. And then it also allows you to kind of, again, dictate how you hope for this process to look, see from a timely manner, like to just move forward through, your expectations and what's going to churn the best results with them. For example, I've got a client in Miami right now who is kind of on my crap list right now due to the way his timing has been moving. And Terrence and I introduced the doctor to him almost 3 weeks ago, and after multiple follow-ups, a takeaway, he finally let us know he'd put an offer in somebody else's hands, which was Scott Martindale's physician. But now he's not certain if that doctor is going to sign or not. And so he's trying to circle back 3 to 4 weeks here after we've left multiple direct messages, emails, contacts for him on, how quickly we need to move to get these physicians on a phone call or virtual with their CEO. And he didn't abide by that. And, we did everything we could. We pushed, we did the takeaway. And here we are 4 weeks later. Now he's circling back with me, trying to rekindle that candidate to see if he would be interested. So he has a backup plan for a physician that it could be a coin flip if he signs his contract or not. And so, this morning, he had texted me, and I made it very clear to him again that it's tough for us to be out in front of these things and be able to control the process if our consulting and our advice is not going to be abided by, and it's not from a standpoint of us just trying to move this along quickly as possible. And I made it very clear to him that I'm doing this to help you, right, in your recruiting efforts. We've had multiple conversations before to where, I'm not having results here, and it was very easy for me to turn his process back onto him and, and outline why he's not seeing those results. And ended up being a good call. And he was understanding. We're going to try to get on a call as soon as I get back from vacation and iron this out. But it's scenarios like that to where if you can educate and inform the client on what is producing the best results from a time frame perspective, from name clearance to send out to phone call to virtual or on-site, whatever the process is, even if it's not your own client, or even if it's just a new interaction for you, you can slip that in, very short, brief email, on the phone, whatever the case is. I think that goes a long way, and it'll allow you to push that process in a way that is has a little bit more merit behind it, versus just kind of like, hey, here's how we operate. I hope you abide by, what we're following up on. I think that education would go a long way. So, as far as, follow-ups, being proactive is the biggest thing in our job, right? Proactive in the sense of, I mentioned it earlier, being 2 steps ahead, right? Being proactive to allow yourself to push the name clearances, push sendouts, push, every step of the process forward with conviction, where it's, it allows you to know that there's not going to be anything that goes missing in your follow-up. Obviously, you get a full stable of candidates. You're working 40 doctors at a time. Obviously, we're going to have things going for 75% of those. 25% might still be trying to procure, whether it's journal marketing or mailers out for them, whatever the case is. But being proactive in the sense of calling for action, right? Every follow-up needs to call for action, and outlining that action on what needs to be taking place, and that can be for the candidate or the client. In a name clearance sense, it's hey, following up to get this name cleared, so and so's looking in your area exclusively and setting up interviews now. I'm hopeful to get this Sendout, this CV in your team's hands for review, and be able to make a connection by Friday or Monday of next week, or Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. I always, a lot, and I know my team is aware of this, but boxing individuals in, or as some people would call it, option closing. Option closing is calling for action, but then you dictating the action to be had. For example, if it's a clearance, hey, I'm following up to get Dr. So-and-so cleared. Are we good to present? I'm hoping to get this CV in your hands so we can get a connection made by, Tuesday or Wednesday, of next week. Option closing works a lot better whenever you're following up on a Sendout, and you already have the candidate's availability. But it allows you to try to get a client or a candidate to pinpoint it down into 2-3 days that you've picked. That way it takes the decision out of their hands, and it takes the waiting out of their hands, and it allows you to take a process to where, whenever you're following up, they might say, hey, we can set up a call, let me check with my team. We might be able to set up a call next week or the following. If you pin them into, 2 to 3 days based on the conversation or the availability that you have from the candidate, it's going to allow you to move that along and allow them to essentially pick from one of those options that you provide from them. Doesn't always work, but oftentimes you'll see yourself being able to control the narrative and control the speed of the process and allow them to kind of fall into your hands and allow you to schedule everything from there. I know that we have several recruiters who kind of run point for their clients, their exclusive clients that that actually will schedule those calls. Jeremiah, I believe you do that for Jiva, correct?
Yes. Yep. I'll done that for Jiva and then Bowtie,
Yeah, that's right.
It's awesome because you have much more control over the situation, and you're not any lag time or any just gaps are totally eliminated at that point. So not all clients would be interested in doing that, but those that do are awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like you said, it allows you to control the process and allows you to control the narrative, and it just kind of puts a tighter grip on the follow-up, essentially, to where it's like you're running the show. And sometimes they'll abide by it, yes. Sometimes they won't. But if you can get a client to where you present that option, you try to option close them in a follow-up, it can certainly go a long way and speed things up. So before I jump right into owned client protocol, any questions, comments, anything specific that I think John, do you have a question? Is there one in the chat here?
Yeah, I mean, what's your thoughts on when I first came back here? I was holding off on doing name clearance for 2026 candidates until I saw that people had been closing 2026 candidates, and so I said,
Right.
I got to get in on that bandwagon. But I'm now getting 2027 residents who are reaching out, and that seems a bit too far. I mean, what are thoughts on how far out we're willing to bother our clients? And
well, so obviously it's very early for 2027. A few things that I would say is, you're probably not going to see a lot of introductions for 2027s until January, February of this year, maybe late December, November. But however, on the flip side of that, if you've got a 2027 that's looking in a specific area, I still would go ahead and pull the job futures, pull a search form just as normal. And then my first go-to would be to look at those jobs, look at those clients, and look for recent notes. And what I mean by that is, what if you've got an employer who's had a job open for quite some time, been struggling for candidates that may be extremely desperate to get some individuals in their pipeline. I'll probably take a chance on that. If I know a client has several openings, and we don't do a lot of work with them or don't place a lot of physicians with them, that's one that I may probably reach out to first and foremost. Not necessarily fire a clearance off right away, but I'm going to reach out to them, say, hey, I'm working with a stellar 2027 candidate, trying to get a jump on their search. First thing that they're going to ask you is, when is this candidate looking to sign a contract? And that's the conversation I'd be having with them as well, is like, we're 2027, obviously you're getting a very, very, very far head start on your search compared to a lot of folks. It's going to be tough for me to even, connect you with any of the employers that we represent, just because are you going to be prepared to sign a contract if we find you the right position, in the next month or two? So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I'd still take a look at, see if there is, an angle to get them in, see if there's a dire need from an employer. On employers who notoriously struggled in the past to get placements or have a full pipeline, those would be ones that I'd probably maybe take a chance on. But yeah, as far as across the board, yeah, you're probably not going to see introductions for those, I'd say, till around the first of the year.
I would add
Ian,
something here, Logan.
I was going to say, Ian, Jerry, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think if you're gonna, I'm not gonna say you shouldn't work 2027s right now. Instead, what I would say is that if you're gonna do it, the doc has to have a really good why in terms of being in that specific location, right? You're not going to be able to just shop around the 2027 who's like, yeah, I just want to go to a big city. Those employers' needs are going to be way too immediate. It's unlikely they've conducted a community needs assessment for 2027 at this point. That'll likely come probably a year out, maybe a little bit longer. But I would say in general, it's about a year. When I would say you're definitely in the clear to start introducing candidates. Like if, right now, obviously, we should be very much in the thick of introducing 2026s, right? But if a candidate's like, this is the only place I'm looking, I grew up here, my family's there, it's this location or bust, get out in front of it. Force employers to tell you no. Make sure they understand that this doctor is either going to be working for them or one of their competitors. It's not a matter of if, but when. And so if they want a chance to consider this individual, they need to take a look at him now, or they're going to be off the market soon, because what Logan said here, they're going to be willing to commit early to the right opportunity. I think for a practice, so I want to differentiate between like a graduating resident and a fellow and a practicing physician. I think a practicing physician is going to be could be a little bit tougher, because if they're projecting not needing to leave for a year and a half, you guys, a lot of things can change in a year and a half for a practicing doctor versus a resident or a fellow who we all know they're going to have to get a job. But if a practicing doctor already has one, that's almost too much time for me, with the exception of my family and I are moving here because that's where we're from, that's where all our family is, so on and so forth. So I think that's really what you need to be looking for, is compelling reasons for a client to take action now on someone who's not available later, or is available later, sorry.
Love that. Is that a good answer for you, John? Give you a good...
Yeah, that's
perfect.
and for my gut, so thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all. No problem at all. All right, let's pick back up here. My page, John. So as far as owned client protocol, obviously we all have our own clients that we have earned the right to run point on and be the exclusive point of contact on, whether that's building great relationships, signing them on as a brand new client, or even maybe from the past, solidifying a very large increase in their fee based on what was previously set up, which I think that that allows you as a recruiter to have a little bit more of a hands-on approach with any candidates that are coming through to your, for introduction to your employer or your client. With that being said, though, I would say don't be a gatekeeper in a sense to where sometimes you'll see, and I know I've ran into it and I've been, done it myself, from a situation of knowing a, hold on just a second. There we go. Sorry, my headset's dying, guys. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, can you hear me? Good to go? Okay, perfect. But yeah, so don't be a gatekeeper in a sense to where sometimes I think it can kind of be a double-edged sword to where you understand and know your client's needs to the extent to where you can almost put a decision on whether this candidate's going to be a good fit or not. And that is something that we could completely stray away from. I think whenever you are running point on an employer and have that kind of honor and significant, part of that front end relationship, it should be our duty as client owners to be more so a facilitator versus a gatekeeper. And what I mean by that is there's going to be several opportunities or several candidates that come through that may not look, picture perfect from a name clearance that your colleague put together. There could be some, again, as I mentioned in my first discussion topic, there's some plausible deniability that could be needed from a sense of why this doctor is being introduced. So I would say, versus being a gatekeeper, act more as a facilitator in the fact that work with your colleagues, work with your colleagues directly, get the understanding, and be open with your colleagues about what your hesitancies are for sending this, what you're hopeful for the outcome is, and then understand that, again, introductions, name clearances can be from as strong as you've already, spoke directly about the position with the candidate to, hey, I know this candidate is seeking positions with this, and this. It checks a lot of their boxes. It's in the general vicinity of, where they're looking. I'm going to take a chance on trying to make this connection happen because I think it would be beneficial for both parties, right? And obviously, those conversations that you have with your colleagues about those are what's going to build a foundation to having the confidence in the why as we move forward. There's a lot of oftentimes there's very, some clients obviously we know that are extremely picky and extremely, they'll find any reason to shy away from a doctor clearance, and whatever the case is, not all clients are like that. But what I would say is, work with your colleagues that are making those introductions to find an angle. Like there's always an angle, essentially, almost always, to where you can get creative and try to push back on the client a little bit, and not necessarily push in a way that's going to upset them or offend them by any means. But that's the beautiful thing about our job is we can ask questions, without any kind of, direct. I've heard multiple leaders, and they've told me this from the get-go. It's very hard to screw up in this job or upset a lot of people. And that's kind of the beautiful part about it is we're in the middle between we're not aligned with a client, we're not aligned with a candidate. We're simply here to, make connections that could possibly turn into great matches, right? And so I would say lean into that a little bit from a chance or a point of making. Taking chances of asking questions, taking chances of, pushing a client that may have told you no for some specific reason months and months ago versus, now here we are 6 to 8 months later and, things could have changed. They may come back on a question and say, hey, absolutely not. We told you this a while ago. And, oh, I'm totally sorry. I apologize. And wipe your hands and walk away and move on. But there's a lot of times I think that it's very easy to get controlling or passionate or too passionate about the clients that individuals will run point on just based on the relationships that they've procured, to where it can kind of sometimes not limit, but put some delays in what could be a potential connection or process made. Ian, I know that you and I had discussed a little bit about that on Tuesday. Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to, something you and I had discussed was, you know, don't try to be a gatekeeper, try to be a facilitator. And I think that's really, pardon me, I think that's really the attitude that everyone needs to adopt here. We're trying to get as many candidates cleared as possible. Are there maybe reasons why the candidates shouldn't be sent? That's possible, but I think that's definitely going to be the exception. I think, if you receive a clearance as a representative of the client and you don't see a good reason to send that, the best thing you can do at that point is pick up the phone, call your colleague and say, hey, just trying to make sure we've got a reason why this client's going to be excited to respond to this email, excited to clear and excited to review this CV. And, sometimes that bar can be pretty low, but you've got to have some sort of a reason. And I think in the absence of that, it can be tricky. I think what we don't want to see and is something that says along the lines of, I can't send this name clearance email until I know that you've spoken with this candidate about the job and the exact location. That's just something that isn't a part of how we operate at Curare. And I just want to make that very clear that, we all know we do a fair amount of parameter shopping here. And if there are good reasons to make an introduction, we want to do it. Okay. There are plenty of times when we might not have, the candidate's not going to have exact ties to a location. Take a foreign medical graduate, for example, or a candidate on a visa, right? They might not have any ties to places in America. And so why are they looking in this area? Because they think it'd be a nice place to live and they're looking for the best job opportunity, right? But you've got to be able to create something there that can give people confidence, right? If you're just sending something that says, looking for hospitalist jobs in Florida, for example, and you're submitting them to a hospitalist job in Florida, I mean, I think that one's, I hope they are at that point, right? They better be looking for a hospitalist job in Florida if that's why you're sending them, right? So that's a good example of something where you need more than that. That's assumed at that point. Just you sending the clearance is an assumption from the client that they're interested in this job. So what else do you got, right? And I think this is something where we've got to be committed to working together to make this happen. And I think that's the biggest point here. And I also want to remind client owners that you should go, if you're not certain, go to the physician record that's been sent to you. Take a look at it. Are there corresponding notes that make sense for why this clearance is happening? In the absence for that of that, like I said, give your colleague a call. I think there's a lot of times when we go back and forth in email, and the same thing could be accomplished much faster if we just picked up the phone and talked to each other. And as a slightly related thing here, since so many of us are not working together, pretty much none of us, right? Well, let's pick up the phone and get to know each other a little bit better when we get an opportunity to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm big on those conversations with your colleagues because, again, there's multiple angles where you can create a connection, and it's very hard to do that or come up with those ideas via email if you're going back and forth and trying to build off that. So I would certainly encourage each and every one of you that are running point on a client to yeah contact your colleague who's making the introduction. One thing I'll add too is, as the owned client or exclusive, owner of a client, you do have the right to contact. And again, it's obviously you want to work with whoever is representing the candidate at the time and introduce him to your client, but you do have the right to contact that physician. I would say there'd be scenarios like that, if your colleague's out of the office or on PTO and you're wanting to get an update from that specific candidate, by all means, you do have the right to do so. Even to add to that, I almost encourage it because, I've had multiple conversations with candidates that have been introduced to, one of my strong clients up in Northwest Indiana, Powers. Just because I know their process, I know the area, I can speak very highly to what they offer. And so I know that that's gone a long way. I know Jeremiah's done the same thing for Jiva and several other clients that he has. Peter's done it with a few of his as well that I know of. So it's like, if you own that client and you're running the point of contact, be more than a gatekeeper from bad sendouts and clearances. Be a facilitator. Work with your colleagues to try to make the most out of every connection that's going to be made, and from there, I think that we'll see a lot more clearances turn into sendouts, and sendouts turn into connections that we may have doubted in the beginning that blossom into something that could potentially turn into a placement. I know we're running long the tooth here, so I'm going to try to run through the rest of this real quick here. Obviously, we've touched on quite a bit from a writing and name clearance standpoint on how to tailor that specifically to each client, as Ian was just mentioning. It all stems back, if you look at everything that I've included in these discussion topics, it all stems back to the why, right? Why are we introducing this candidate? If you have a strong why and why that candidate might be interested, why that client might be interested, why that that connection should be made or at least seen through. Again, we're not guaranteeing any placements, but we're here to make connections and see what can blossom into that based off the parameters and info and plausible information that we have. And from there, the decision making, the opinions, all of that's out of our control, right? I mean, obviously we can manipulate and put our sales hats on and consult with the candidate, consult with the client to try to make that a possibility for us to invoice, but at the end of the day, we can't decide for them. We're in the business of selling individuals, which everyone has their own free will and right to move in the way that they'd like to. So there's only so much that we can control, and obviously name clearances and sendouts are the biggest part of our process to make that happen. And so if you have your why, you're confident in your why, and you exude that through each step of the process, and the employer knows their why, the candidate knows why it's a good fit. Like, if you can lean into that with conviction, and do it in a timely manner from a follow-up protocol, it's something that I think is going to not only speed the process up for you, but allow you to get through more connections made in a much quicker time frame, which, as you do that and you get the process down, it's just going to free up more bandwidth for you to focus your attention and efforts on procuring new connections and new opportunities made. So same thing with sendouts. Sendouts is obviously that's our pitch, that's our introduction, that's the biggest why of them all, right? So sendouts should be very clear cut on why we're introducing this physician. A big thing that I wanted to run through here is with sendouts is don't write a sendout with repetitive information off the CV. Make it more personal. Make it more put a personal touch on it, because an employer is going to see the CV and they're going to read all that information, right? So there's no reason for us to say, they did residency program here, here, and here, they're double boarded in this, that, and the third. If we can tailor a sendout and tailor an introduction to make it more personal and making it more, make the client more excited about why this candidate is going to be, a good fit for them, it's going to, push them and make them more excited to hop on the call in a much quicker fashion. And from there, obviously, follow-up protocol is going to be as is to push that from either dead to signed. So we've only got about 7 minutes here. I'd love to open it up. Any questions, any scenarios, situations you guys have ran into in regards to writing a good name clearance or pushback or writing a good send out. Anything that you guys would like to bring to the table to discuss, be happy to chat.
I'd like to throw one thing out really quick, Logan, and that is the power of repetitiveness. I mentioned this last week in the roundtable, is that we're all here together, working together, and we're spread out throughout the whole United States as far as who we're calling, who we're speaking with. The terms that we use sometimes, like you might hear somebody, I'm just going to go ahead and throw Jeremiah Forster under the bus. You might hear him say, it's because he's interested in this area. It's because they're interested in the Southeast United States. It's because your community is perfect for them. That could be the why. And for us here, and especially because of Jeremiah, he has high value, that might sound like a broken record to some of you. When you're getting those emails consistently from our higher value movers of candidates, if you would, when you're seeing those same word tracks, The people that you're sending them to don't see the same word tracks all the time, though, that in that high a volume. So keep that in mind. It's like if you're hearing this from your colleagues and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this sounds like a broken record. It's the same old, same old. He's interested in the area. It's because the client only gets to hear it one time a day from Jose, or maybe 3 times a day from you as a client owner. And even that would be a relatively high volume. So don't let that get to you. Realize that that's just part of the job, pushing the process forward. And many times we're sending CVs to clients who we haven't actually gotten the why from the physician. We're making that leap based on our own skill set. And once you guys all get good at that, it expands your placement opportunities quite significantly. So keep that in mind as you're seeing this repetitive language from your colleagues. And same on the flip side, don't be afraid to use it all the time. When you find something that works for you, push on it. Secondly, I wanted to make this really quick. ABCs, always be creating, right? You could create a lot of free time and opportunity to create new things by having a good system in place for this discussion, and that is your follow-up name clearing emails. As a recruiter, I would make it my highest priority to have those done before by the time I'm 30 minutes into my day, all my resent name clearing emails would be resent. That's what my goal would be as a recruiter. So you have that task out of the way, and then you're just working on new stuff the rest of the day. And really, you guys, that is just repetitive. Find your email, send it back off, forward type of thing. And if you get that taken care of, then you got the whole day to go out there and create new things, find new jobs, make new connections, and not have to worry about your name clearing emails other than being reactive to them. So, and again, I urge people to get on the phone, both with your colleagues and with your clients, especially during that follow-up phase of your first name clearing email. Logan, I think you mentioned in the beginning, I use it as an excuse. I use our system as an excuse to follow up right away on especially a good name clearing email that I feel good about. I'll call the client and be like, oh man, Chris Wolf, man, I gotta say, I didn't know if my email made it through. Sometimes we have some problems. Did you see that name clearing email? It should be at the top of your inbox. I'm gonna resend it right now. And
Word on
start
the
that
street, my
process like
emails are going to
right
spam. Yeah.
jump on it right away and make it happen and see if you can't get your process sped up. Because again, what's the number one rule? TKD. Sooner we get that stake claimed, the more we're protected. And security is like the bottom of your hierarchy of needs in life and in jobs. Hierarchy of needs, the foundation, it's security. And once we lay that stake, dude, we're secure on the placement for about the next 1 to 2 years. All we got to do is finish up with the work to move it to dead or closed, like Logan said. Thanks a lot, Logan. Great job.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Any other questions, comments, scenarios? Good to
Yeah, I
go?
have a question about like the gatekeeping with regard to location.
Yeah.
It's totally valid, but like I'm in a situation with my client in Rifle, Colorado.
Yep.
It's like we advertise for the job to include easy access to Denver. Because if they're not interested in Rifle, we can at least get them on the phone with the word Denver and then see, where are you open to? If you're open to Denver, maybe you're open to other locations. Right. So it's a bait and switch opportunity. Because the word Denver is in that ad, probably 70%, if not more, of the interested candidates that I get on the phone turn out to not be interested in Rifle. It's too far away. It's like 3 hours away. So unless I confirm with them, this is in Rifle, they're not going to, I would be sending my client candidates who aren't truly interested in their location. So I have to check, are you interested in Rifle specifically? Because that's where this is. My point is, when colleagues send me clearances to send out, I'm like, I understand it's annoying to say, but are they interested in Rifle? But if I don't do that, then I'm therefore sending my client a whole bunch of candidates who aren't even interested in their location. So I'm sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Logan, can I jump in on this?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I got a great idea for this, and it's something I'd like to see everybody doing. And frankly, it's something we already should be doing, but I'll admit we're not at 100% completion rate by a pretty wide margin. Okay, there's a really easy way to ensure that we can get out in front of this, and I'm going to use your job specifically, Tanner, because this is kind of to the T what we're talking about. Okay, so what I would do if I'm you, Tanner, is number one, I would make sure there is a send out preview in that job. Okay, I'm not looking at it right now. I don't know if it exists. If it doesn't, get it in there ASAP. Okay. The reason I'm saying that is because you're going to get a clearance from somebody. Okay. And you're going to say, hey, obviously, you know, the job's in Rifle. It's not near Denver. I'm going to go ahead and send this on. But as soon as we've got the clearance, I need to make sure you send this send out preview where you're identifying the jobs in Rifle. This is the name of the employer. This is a website to their hospital. It's a website to the community. And that way, if they can't come back to the employer, number one, and say, I didn't know the job was in Rifle, because then we'll have written documentation that you do. Okay. And number two, as the owner, you've got confidence that that communication has been sent. Those details have been transmitted, whether it's a text, it's an email, it's a phone call. I might even do all three, right? Because between clearance and send out, that's your window, okay, to get in there and get out in front of something in case there is an objection, right? So this goes to kind of the gatekeeping aspect of we've got a little bit of time in between that clearance and send out. Let's say worst case scenario is we send the name, it gets cleared, your colleague sends a send out preview, you send the CV, okay, client comes back and says, hey, I just talked to them, they only want Denver. And they're like, gosh, I'm sorry about that. We sent them all the details about the job. They knew the job was in Rifle. I don't know how we got our wires crossed. You know, we'll try to make sure that doesn't happen in the future, okay? But that's the type of action that both parties have to be accountable to if you're sending a CV to one of your colleagues' clients. And I would go so far as to say you should do that even for open clients, right? If you're waiting for a client to say, yes, we're interested, or waiting, you know what I mean? That's you're killing time. You're burning daylight. Go out there and confirm interest or kill the deal right away. I guarantee you that for every time you reach out to a client and you say, hey, wanted to let you know I just connected with Dr. Johnson. Sounds like they're more interested in opportunities, other opportunities. You can remove them from consideration, or something in their search has changed. They're no longer interested in the job in Rifle. You can remove them. As long as you've done that before they've initiated contact, which I know sometimes that's the gambit, right? They're going to say thanks. Now, if that happens, 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to start being like, what the heck's going on, right? But these are the measures that you can take, that both parties should take, both client owner and the owner of the candidate and send out, to protect everybody and make sure you don't end up with egg on your face. So for all of the client owners out there who are like, man, I wish I could make sure that the candidates know about the job, okay, have a send out preview in there. Make it easy for your colleagues. And like Logan said earlier, you're even in a position where, as the client owner, if you don't, let's say the person sent the CV and they're out, and you don't have a chance to say, hey, confirm the send out preview, send it yourself. Send it yourself to the candidate. You can do that and CC your colleague, right? Make sure that this information is getting out in front of them so that you don't end up in a bad position. Because I think that's what most people are concerned about, is that you're going to get your hand slapped. So take whatever actions you can to mitigate that risk. Is that making sense, everybody?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, it does.
I'm also going to take that one a step further, and I don't want to go too far down this wormhole, Tanner, but let's not market that job as a Denver type of situation. Here's why. You said the bait and switch. Totally agree with it. Foundation of our industry. Totally cool. Great strategy. However, there's no switch. You don't have a switch. So why bait when you don't have a switch, right? We don't have Denver jobs to send your candidates to that you're baiting in with that opportunity. Once you have those, you got a gold mine waiting to be produced, right? So a flip side of this is spend an hour a day in Denver finding 2 jobs. Find 2 primary care jobs in the Denver and Denver suburbs. They're definitely out there. So much growth, so much competition. They're going to be found if you put the time in, and we'll find candidates because demographically speaking, it's one of the hottest markets in America. But again, this is a situation where change the marketing ploy for yourself and take out that group of people that's going to come that aren't going to be interested. Because you look at this job, you're a 5-hour drive from Denver. You're closer to Salt Lake City than you are Denver. And what you need to do is really market towards a specific outdoors type of person. That's probably who's already accepted these positions up to date to this date. You've had a few placements there already. I bet you each one of them has a set of climbing gear or climbing ropes or a mountain bike or a hunting rifle in their possession right now as I speak, because it's Friday and they're taking the day off to enjoy the outdoors. So yeah, that's the type of, you should just totally change your marketing on this one, Tanner. And that's
Tanner,
all I'll say on that.
I will add, I'm pretty
Okay.
sure Brittany just put in a Denver job for Oak Street, or I believe
Oh, there you
so.
go.
Yeah, downtown Denver. I think they need 3
I
physicians
think I
too. So
saw that, yeah. But
I'd be
yeah,
scared to do
I hear you.
those old futures trying to flip the script on any of those that were focused on Denver for sure.
I'll add though too, as a client owner, exclusivity, single point of contact, it is absolutely mandatory that you have send out previews on there. And you don't have to add them until you get your first send out. But once you have a send out, it has to be in there. It's your responsibility. The text preview, that's only needs to be in there if you're planning on marketing the job in a text type of format. That's just so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. But the send out review, that is a mandatory step as a client owner. And I know it's one that's easy to neglect, but it's also one that's easy to complete, you guys. And if you have any questions, if you want any help, I will gladly help you. I could write one of those up in a minute pretty much and explain to you how you could start doing them in probably less than a minute as well. But those are great tools to have, because what we do here at Curare is give people the opportunity to say no, right? We give them the opportunity to say no. If you're doing that, you're doing things really good.
Sweet. Good deal. No other questions? Looks like Ian took off.
Is Jerry gonna play us a song? Play us out?
Do it.
I think he's on mute. Maybe he's hiding that.
No, I need about 2 more years of practice before I could do that. Probably.
He's almost
Sorry.
there.
Almost there. And I'll go by really quick.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, listen, gang, I appreciate you guys. Hope everyone has a wonderful Friday and a good weekend. But yeah, thanks for joining. And any follow-up questions, anything that maybe I missed or you wanted to cover specifically, feel free to give me a ring, and happy to chat about it. So,
Thank you,
Thanks,
Logan.
Logan. Appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Logan.
Have a
Yep.
great weekend.
Bye.
Have a good weekend.
appreciate you guys. Yep, peace.
Good job.